For this tutorial, I'm just going to show you how to take a single sprite and make a bunch of them that are uh, sort of different sprites. Um, so right now I have a turtle and a fish. Um, Here is my fish moving along, and the fish has its own um, sprite object here, um, which is set up. But let's imagine that actually I want to have, maybe 15 different fish that are moving at different speeds, and that each of which could be eaten by this turtle independently. Um, so if that's the case, rather than having just a simple fish object here, or if you didn't use a sprite, you might have just had a fish, one add drawing function here with some variables, the same difference. I'm going to put this into what I'd call a constructor. So traditionally, constructors create an object or create something. They usually start with a capital letter. So I'm going to use the capital F for fish. And I'm going to go ahead and make the constructor create the fish. It would be normal to return the fish object at the end in case I wanted to later manipulate that. So here I make a fish. Now you'll notice my fish has gone away because there's no longer a fish being made. Oh, I could do the add drawing inside of the constructor if I want. I don't have to. It's up to me. But so now I could make my first fish, and I could make a second fish, and I could make a third fish. Now I don't actually have 3 fish here because they're all the same, but if I go ahead and change some of the values, I'll make fish 3y equal to 150. I now have 3 fish coming at 3 different points. I could move the x value. So now I've got 3 fish that are all swimming independently. Maybe I'll make fish 3 a little bit faster. All right, so one of these fish is quicker than the x. One of these fish is very fast. There it goes flying. All right, so that's the basic idea of it. I just encapsulate it in a function. Oftentimes, rather than creating the object and then manipulating the things here, you might want to use a pattern where you hand in some initial values. So I could do that by doing something like this. I could say like Vx equals 44, x equals 12, y equals 300, set that equal to default, and then these can just be the defaults. And then here I could set those values directly rather than putting them as separate lines of code. So that's really just 2 ways to spell the same thing. Doesn't matter too much if you do that or not, but it makes your code a little easier to understand. So now I'll have 3 fish in 3 different places. Good. Maybe these 2 fish that start together will have a different velocity so that one swims away. There we go. Now these 2 are slowly moving apart. And then you could also have like an on click that made a new fish. You could have any kind of logic you wanted. But that's the basic idea. We just use a function which then takes this fish constant and locks it in. I'll just very quickly show you what's happening in the inspector. This may be a little rough to see. I don't know if I can make this big enough font, but if I open up the inspector here and I go to my source code, Beautiful. And then I'll just throw a breakpoint inside of that update function. It's now updating for one of the fish. And if I take a look here, we have at the script level, there are 3 fish. At this local variable, there is this individual sprite. All right, and at this point, I am referring to this particular fish. If I step over, or if I move forward, the next time it runs, I'm going to have a different fish. This one's at 55.50. Next one is at 497.100. So this function is being created 3 different times. I could also have done the same thing without using the word this. If that's confusing, it might be more straightforward to just say fish, because it's the fish that I'm referring to. I'll go ahead and save that, and I'll show you what that looks like in the inspector too, if you want to do it with that style with no thises. So now I've got these fishes, and if I block here, I can see here it shows me this block scope. So at the scope, fish is defined at a block scope. Normally, if I made it a var, it would be a function scope. So there is the fish. When I'm inside of here, I can only see one fish at a time. But here's a fish at -2, 300. That's that little fishy there. If I hit play and go to the next break, it's now going to be a fish again, but this time it's the fish at 197.50. So that's probably that guy there. If I hit play again, it's going to show me the third fish. There's a fish again. This one's at 177.100. So that's that guy. So this code inside of here runs once per fish function. Each fish has its own object and its own x and y values. So every time you call this fish function, you set up a new set of parameters that have their own values. So every fish keeps track of its own state independently. Hope that's helpful.